Howdy hey, welcome to this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series, the show where we spotlight mocks from across the Bionicle community to give you some inspiration for whatever you might be planning. Today is a fan submitted mocks episode because it's still a BISMAS Christmas. We're getting very close to Christmas, so it's certainly very appropriate now to be celebrating with the Christmas times. We're here, you can submit your stuff to be in this sort of special series of the show, and during the month of Christmas I'll be spotlighting these mocks. I'll probably do one more, hopefully on Christmas Day. We'll see how timing works. But stay tuned for that. So more to come. So let's look at all these fan submitter mocks. We've got 10 of them today. Let's dive in. The very first one we've got today is Artemis, Son of Creation, and it's by Timeline 15. So if you're a fan of Kamen Rider, there's some obvious inspiration being taken from this. You can see that in the belt, as well as the helmet design here, both of which I think are very fun. I think it's unique to see a belt design like that. Obviously, because it's taking inspiration from Kamen Rider, it makes sense, but it's still cool to see a very sort of different belt, I guess, weapon design in this sense, on a Bionicle. And I don't know, it's something you don't see every day in that sort of style, so it's nice to see an adaptation of that in that sense. The helmet's also really well done, using some of those gold tooth pieces there to form the eyes. Looks fantastic. I also just love a lot of the system details across this mock. The shoulder design there, using some of those nice curved slope pieces, the sort of 1x2 curved slope pieces there, with one with the little sort of edge cut off and one just sort of the normal one there. We'll see some more of those later in the episode, but that makes for a great looking shoulder design. We can also see some of these like speeder bike triangle kind of like flag pieces on the torso there. I also just love how that looks, just forms a very interesting, pleasing pattern. And then I also love the kind of knee design here, again using some of those curved slope pieces. This is the 2x2 version instead. And yeah, I just love how that looks. There's something very dynamic about that. And again, seems very fitting for that Kamen Rider inspiration there. And yeah, it just looks cool. So always nice to see some beautiful system integration. And I think this is a shining example of that. It's a character that seems to have a lot of posability and life to them. Looks really, really good. This next mock we've got is by Animator X Studios, and it's the Claude Sea Worm. So yeah, I enjoy seeing the kind of color gradient of this sea creature here. There's something about it to me that just seems so fitting for undersea creatures, that sort of bioluminescence of them, or even kind of like the colors you can see in different fish and jellyfish and stuff like that. It just seems very appropriate there. So a lovely example of parts spamming and a really nice kind of color gradient that you can get with those translucent G2 Hero Factory CCBS pieces. Those have so many names. G2, Armor Shell, CCBS, everything. It's everything. But hey, they've been used very nicely here. I also love the head design here with that kind of cute, like, those cute, like, bubble eyes, and then the sort of, like, tusks coming out the back, and the little like, proboscis almost, a little, like, mouth-nose thing there. It's kind of cute. It's cool. I think sea creatures are just such a rich thing to be able to build with, because even in the real world, there's so many of them, and they're all so unique and different and weird, and some of them you kind of even don't imagine exist because they look so odd. And, you know, we've only explored so much of the ocean, so who knows, there could be all sorts of craziness down there. So definitely a rich thing to sort of look into if you want some inspiration. So yeah, always nice to see a good little sea creature mock here. I do really like how this looks. It's got some fun techniques and some fun color usage there. Really nice. And now for Solek by Solek -30.06. I like this take on Solek. So this was built for the Solekverse collab, or Solekverse. What was the hashtag on the Instagrams? Solekverse collab. I did actually get it right the first time. Shouldn't doubt myself. And I think that's just such a fun idea. The idea of like the same character across the multiverse in all their different like variants and different looks and stuff like that. There's a fun idea. And again, some really good inspiration if you need it for a mock. Like, what would Pterodax look like in a different universe? What would Mutanui look like in a different universe? What would your self mock look like in a different universe? It's just a rich possibilities in that idea. So kind of multiverse stuff is certainly something to consider if you're looking for some inspiration. I love the kind of like soldier-like look here for this character. It's almost sort of like post-apocalyptic kind of war-torn vibe here almost. The fact that he's got an asymmetrical leg design here, so one of them is a more robotic leg, like he lost it in the war or something bad happened to it, so he's got a replacement one there, is very fitting and very fun. The cool like wrist blade thing that he's got going on, that's awesome. And the little shoulder mounted gun, there's some very nice weapon designs on here, which complement the mock well and complement the style well too, I think. Even the ammo belt is a very nice, very simple inclusion, but one that really sells the look, I think. So yeah, just a really, really sick aesthetic that's been perfectly nailed here on this MOC, and a very fun way of reimagining Solek here. Super cool to see. Let's move over to the next one. This is Borok Parok by Deadlock 2099 Chance. I kind of enjoy this one here. We went from Solek one set to another set revamp here, and I guess it's kind of like a Borok, specifically this Borok, being reimagined in almost sort of like a G2 style of sorts. I love seeing MOCs that never had a G2 counterpart be kind of given that sort of G2 revamp here, using just purely CCBS pieces. How could you build that creature, character, or whatever in that new sort of building style, and how maybe would LEGO have reimagined it for a modern audience, all that sort of stuff. It's again just some good impetus for some MOCs. So I like the sort of unique body shape of this Borok revamp here. The fact that he's got a sort of larger, almost like bug-like butt on the back there is surprisingly fitting, I suppose, for a Borok. I don't know, the weird hunch look that this has seems very appropriate for a Borok and somewhat fits, but also seems super different. So yeah, I like the fact that there are some pretty noticeable differences, but it also still feels fairly similar in some regard. I like that. I also like that the color scheme has almost been flipped. The original one was more prominently brown with the tan highlights, whereas now it's almost entirely tan with very subtle bits of brown. And I think that's a clever idea of kind of flipping the colors here for this revamp there. And hey, it works well. So yeah, a very fun, quite cute take on a Borok here, and reimagining it in that G2 style here is very pleasing to see. So nicely done. Anderson Builder, has built the next MOC here, and this is Soluka. So obviously also for the Solekverse collab here, in a different way you could maybe build Solek if you were looking to revamp them. And I love this, especially because Solek was a super tiny little Avatoran set, and now he's bulky and huge, very kind of comical in that sense, but still a very like serious, awesome looking MOC here as well. I do love a good sort of like bruiser, big character like that. It's always just a style I enjoy seeing. There's some nice system integration here, certainly some unique system part use, specifically some of these like boat hull pieces that have been used as like knee armor of sorts. Really like how that looks. Those sorts of pieces I feel like I've seen in so many people's collections, and they kind of just sit in a big bin of really big system pieces that people just don't really use. So it's nice to see those, what some people might regard as useless pieces, being given some really good use. So yeah, it just goes to show there's no small pieces, only small people. Hey, if you think you can't use a piece, if a piece is useless, you just go try harder. You just got to think harder. That came across surprisingly passive-aggressive. I apologize. There are no small people. I don't mean to be rude. It's a thing that when I used to do acting, people would say a lot. There's no small roles. There's only small actors or small people. So I was trying to paraphrase that and realized, hey, maybe not everyone knows that quote. So that's where I was getting at. Didn't mean to be rude. I don't even know if that was rude, but hey, it felt rude. I apologize. Boats make for good knees. There's a quote. Put that in Ben Cossy 2022. On the leg design as well, we can see some nice kind of like greeble detail. You can see some of those like grill system tile pieces and a few other sort of like almost sort of like industrial looking things. I like that. The fact there's kind of armor over the top of it and then sort of like greeble mechanical details underneath. It just makes for a nice design. There's a similar effect on the torso as well. The fact there's kind of like a little heart light in the middle there and then armor connecting it over the top. Kind of reminds me of how General Grievous's organs work in Revenge of the Sith. And it just makes for a really cool looking design. So yeah, great stuff here. Well done, good sir. On to the next MOC. This is by Shrizgiti Mate. I apologize for butchering that. And this is Silverbeak Buzzard. So as you can see from this image here, this is like a companion sort of pet for another MOC that was built by the guy whose name I can't pronounce. And I love that concept. Just giving like a pet or a companion of sorts to any of your MOCs that you've made is just cool. It's a great idea. And specifically building a bird, I think, translates surprisingly well to Bionicle pieces. You can see here like the wing design using those Brutaka blade pieces. And a couple other sort of like weapon elements being used here too, like on the beak, that sort of smaller like dagger sword piece, and then those silver claws is sort of like the kind of like feathers at the top of a bird's head in that sense. So yeah, three really nice usages of those sword weapon elements, and they make for perfect representations of that part of a bird on a Bionicle. So yeah, really cool. I also like another weapon piece that's being used here, the cannon piece that's on the back of the bird. I kind of get the sense that the bird could probably shoot that out of its back and, I don't know, lean down and shoot enemies or whatever. It's a very clever, cool idea and a unique way of inserting a weapon onto a Bionicle. So yeah, really cool. But yeah, just a great example of how you could build a bird in Bionicle. It's very nicely done, and the stand also works really well with it too. So yeah, good job. Voximo has built this next mock, and it's Nocturne. So yeah, love a good revamp of Nocturne. Nocturne actually recently just bought Nocturne at a toy fair the other day. Love Nocturne. Love him so much. He's so cool. He's got the cool glow-in-the-dark pieces. He was just a great looking set. So anytime anyone can revamp Nocturne, it just makes me happy. And I feel like I haven't seen a huge amount of Nocturne revamps, excluding the Oops All Nocturne collab, which I have spoken about on BIS in previous episodes, which was a very funny, very clever collab. But that was sort of like, how many times can we build Nocturne for it to, in different funny ways that are like plays on words with his name sort of thing. It's nice to see a more sort of serious Nocturne revamp in that sense here. So I love the inclusion of a bit of silver in here. I think it really works. And I think it also works with the whip, because the original whip was silver. It kind of makes sense to accentuate that a bit more in a revamp. And I love how he's changed up the whip here using some of those ratchet pieces, because you can get like a lot of different poses by just, bending those pieces there. So if you wanted to get some interesting dynamic action poses or have it wrap around someone or something like that, it'd be easy to do it and for it to actually like hold the position that you put it in there. So yeah, just a clever idea and perfect for playing if that is something that you want to do, or if you just want to take some cool photos or something, it would be a good friend for your photography needs. It's also really nice to see the head design done very differently, a lot more sort of customized and not even touching the original headpiece there. Except for the fact that it's on the back. But you know what I mean. It's nice to be able to see that and know that, like, hey, maybe you love Nocturne, you have a couple of pieces, but you don't have enough to actually build the set. You could easily rebuild the head in a slightly different way and still get the spirit of the original set. So yeah, some nice creative possibilities with that. I like how it looks. Noel Karp has built this one, and this is Onry, Hunter of Narek. I quite like this. The crown design on this I think is very fitting, especially for that skull mask piece there. It's a nice combination. It's almost some cool, like, kind of Lich King looking kind of vibe to that head design. It's really cool. And I love the kind of regal look of this character. I think the color scheme, the gold, the red, the silver, that sort of perfectly represents a more sort of like noble, evil, overlord kind of look. But I think the fact that he has that unique kind of like waistcoat thing, combined with the very broad, regal looking shoulders there, all that sort of works together, especially with that crown there to kind of convey that aesthetic, and it works really well. I like it. I also like seeing the exposed red pins on here, which often people don't like seeing those exposed pins, your blue pins, your red pins, because it can contrast too much with the mock and it just doesn't look right. But obviously there's red in this color scheme here, so it kind of ties in a little bit because of that. But I don't know, there's something I like about the sort of like cross pattern that forms that kind of somehow reminds me of royalty, some sort of patterned like, cloth that they might be wearing or undershirt or something. You could see that it might have a pattern like that. So I think it actually works surprisingly well. And the fact that it is sort of slightly covered up by armor as well, yeah, it's a great way of turning the exposed pins on a mock into a sort of feature of the mock in that sense. So yeah, I really dig how that looks, and that's normally something that some people don't like. I myself, depends on the mock, don't always enjoy seeing it, but yeah, sometimes you don't have black pins, or you don't have pins that fit the color scheme of your mock. Oh well, it doesn't really matter. It is what it is. But hey, it works very nicely here. So yeah, I think a fantastic looking mock here, nicely done. Now a mock by Supersonic SNES, and this is Vatrock the Hired Blade. Blades on wrists is always cool, especially because, when they're backwards like this as well, it kind of looks like speed lines like you might see on The Flash or something like that. So it makes it look like he's going fast, makes it look like he's an agile assassin and stuff like that, and it fits the title of the mock. So a very nice aesthetic there, and a great way of integrating weapons onto a Bionicle mock. The color scheme on this is nice, that sort of rusted color that came on Borok G2 and a couple other different sets, like the Cuckoo Bird and a few other things. Yeah, just looks cool. And the arm design using the Mata feet pieces there as a unique way of attaching the hands onto the front there, and then using the socket of the foot to attach to the upper arm. Just a clever creative idea, and it works well. So yeah, a lovely little mock here. On to the final mock now. This is by Mr. Brick Brickelson, and this is the Green Goblin. I adore this. I'm obviously a big Spider-Man fan, so it's very cool to see the Sam Raimi Green Goblin be reimagined and reinterpreted in Lego form. It looks so good. One of my favorite details is the inclusion of the cheese slopes on the upper legs, torso, and I'm sure there's some other parts that I miss. I guess you could say they're on the feet as well. There's a lot of cheese slopes on the MOC, and it kind of reminds me of some of the textured like aesthetics that you see on the actual armor in the movie. It's a surprisingly simple but effective way of like replicating that, and I just really like how it looks. So yeah, very nicely done. Also great to see some of those Nexonite shield pieces in green to sort of form the like pec area of the armor. The sort of more dynamic angles of those I think also play into the aesthetic of this MOC, and it's just a great way of sort of building that kind of six-pack design there. It looks really, really good. The head design on this is phenomenal. I mentioned at the start of the episode some of those curved slope pieces. We can see some of those being used for the eyebrows here to give him this sort of like angry eyebrow look, as the front there is a little bit more kind of like furrowed, so it looks like he's angry. I love that. Combined with the sort of open mouth and using that clip piece as a little nose as well, it's just so perfectly crafted and just such a good replica of the original source material there. I love how it looks. And I think that angry eyebrow look is such a great idea if you can replicate that on a brick-built head or some sort of custom head design that you might be making, because it's a great way to sort of reflect like facial expressions or a more sort of like evil-looking MOC or whatever. It looks really, really good. Other stuff that's really good is the glider as well. I just love how that looks, and using some of that purple cloth, which I think is not official Lego cloth. I think that's just some cut up purple fabric there, but I don't know. Still, it looks great, and I think that's a great way of achieving some of the beautiful curves of the Green Goblin's glider there. It just looks so good. Also, he has frogs on his knees. I don't need to reiterate anything else about that. It speaks for itself. Fantastic. So, adore this MOC and love all the other MOCs in this episode of BIS today. Hope you enjoyed this second last BISMAS Christmas episode. Don't forget to submit your MOCs to the submission email that's on your screen. And hey, you better submit them quick, because I still got others to cover, and I'm kind of just taking the most recent stuff. So first come, first serve. See you soon, and submit very quickly, because I'm going to be recording that pretty soon. Ideally before Christmas, I'll record it and then bring it out on Christmas Day. So get in quick. If not, maybe you'll be in a future one, but get in quick if you want to see yourself on Christmas Day. Anyway, love you tons. Happy building. Bye for now. Check the links in the description below to see the other stuff these mockers have built. I gotta get out of here. See ya.